Reviewing our Wise Men Celestial Circuit Journey, Part 6, 9/11 Sudden Destruction. My name is Daniel Vallis, and welcome to our channel. Now let's look at 9/11 and the Twin Towers. With these events happening right at an expected time and also serving as a catalyst leading towards sudden destruction, these events become very suspicious. And we also start seeing more indication that they were very deliberate and lining up with the celestial clock. Of course, most people are familiar with the Twin Towers, built practically the same. One had an observation deck on the top, the other had a TV mast. Other than that, they're pretty much the same. Identical buildings that formed a massive 11 on the horizon. Steel buildings, unique in their construction in that a lot of the strength was along the outside with a central core, which cleared up a lot of room for the floor plans. So it had internal strength, but then a lot of the strength was along the outside. They were basically like giant metal cans, the strength being along the outside. And then if you were over 35 years old, you probably remember the events of 2001, September 11th, where you were on that day, what happened. It's definitely etched in my mind very strongly. I was at work on that day, remember it very strongly. It shook the world, captivated the news, just the scope of what had just happened, the attack on these buildings, but then also bringing them down. The devastation it caused when they collapsed, the impact right, especially in the financial district of New York City. The attack on the World Trade Center. These icons linked with financial strength, with trade, with the dollar, with America's financial might. This symbol was brought down here in the heart of the financial center in Manhattan. Also took a couple buildings down with them. Building 7 collapsed by itself. The tribute and light commemorating the first anniversary, but also commemorating the ones after that. It consists of 88 vertical searchlights arranged in 2 columns of light to represent the Twin Towers. 88 vertical searchlights. Now this is interesting as these twin lights are pointing up to the heavens, that it uses 88 lights, and there are 88 recognized constellations in the heavens that these 2 lights are pointing at. So already it's eyebrow raising with the number of lights that they use pointing at the celestial lights. In 2 columns of twin lights for an event that's commemorated associated with Gemini, the twins. Then in 2004, they were making efforts to rebuild on this site, and so they laid the symbolic cornerstone, Enduring Spirit of Freedom, on July 4th, 2004. And why did they pick July 4th? Because they are commemorating the American spirit that goes back to 1776. July 4th, 2004. And eventually they rebuilt the One World Trade Center. Initially nicknamed Freedom Tower, but they changed the name to One World Trade Center, which looking up from the ground level appears to be a pyramid, but it's an anti-prism, basically merging the 2 shapes of the Twin Towers into one, right next to the reflecting pools, reminding of the events of 9/11, the memorial there, and then still continually doing the twin lights at the anniversary, 88 lights pointing up to the heavens. A grouping of celestial lights in 88. One World Trade Center, also known as the Freedom Tower previously, the building, including its spire, reached a total height of 1,776 feet. Its height in feet is a deliberate reference to the year when the United States Declaration of Independence was signed. The building opened on November 3rd, 2014. The building has 94 stories, with the top floor numbered 104. Alright, this is very suspicious because 104 brings to mind Sirius, the prince, the brightest fixed star, because it is along the ecliptic at the 104 degrees. That is its designation. And so this building with its top floor numbered 104, with the events that are already lining up with Gemini, it's very suspicious that the top floor is the same number as Sirius, since Sirius is in line with Gemini. Now, if we look at the date of September 11th, 2001, where was Jupiter? It was at 101, which is interesting, 1 and 1, 2 twin 11s right there. It wasn't perfectly in line with Sirius, but visibly it would have been because it's practically right in the midst of Gemini at that point. So on 9/11, Jupiter was visibly in line with Sirius, although it would have just to move over a little bit more to be technically in line with Sirius. Again, Sirius, which is at 104, is directly under Gemini, which is where Jupiter, the king planet, was on the day of 9/11. That's suspicious just by itself. Now, in spring of 2014 was when they were starting to clear the plaza of One World Trade Center. It wasn't open to the public until November of 2014, but is practically done in 2014 already in the spring. That is when Jupiter came back to the same spot, 101, visibly in line with Sirius, which is at 104. And they built this building with the top floor of 104. The twins merged into one, and Sirius is under the twins. So this is very suspicious. Top floor is 104. And the events of 9/11 happened when Jupiter the king was in the twins, and the building is opening when Jupiter is in the twins again. And it takes about 12 years for it to go completely around the circuit, so for the destruction of one and the reopening of the new to happen at the exact celestial time spot is very suspicious that this is done very deliberately, and this is in no way coincidental. They are doing things to chime out with certain celestial markers in the twins and Sirius. And we look in a couple of weeks, August 12th, 2025, that's when Jupiter and Venus will be in conjunction at 104 degrees along the ecliptic, right in line with Sirius. Closer than they were on 9/11, although it was visibly in line then. So this is important that there's a celestial conjunction happening right in the midst of Gemini, the twins, right at 104, which this new building is also apparently pointing at as well. The merging of two twins together, conjoining together, uniting together into one. The building opened in 2014, the same year as the blood moons. And here we are coming a full Jupiter circuit later in August 12, 2025. Very close match right there, exactly at Sirius 104. And this building commemorates the events of 1776 with even the symbolic cornerstone laid on July 4th. Which was when Jupiter and Venus were close to conjoining together. They joined together on the 7th of July, but in our time on August 12th is when they will be conjoining together, conjunction right in the midst of Gemini, the twins, two becoming one, visibly. And so there's a lot of suspicious parallels when we see things being done symbolically, but also very deliberately, which tells us that the events originally with September 11, 2001 were not just some random events that happened and were completely out of the blue. No, they were scripted. They were done very deliberately at very important celestial times that go with also what the heavens are declaring. So again, the more that we look at the events of September 11, especially how that started the war on terror and ended the Cold War and got things moving toward the day of sudden destruction, the day of the Lord, the great and terrible day that's coming, and how quickly a coalition came together within hours, really, after these events, and how just conveniently all these events seem to be lined up with the celestial clock, a lot is telling us there's some very shady and sketchy things going on here that leads us to conclude it was a deliberate demolition on 9/11. Of course, a lot of people saw the planes fly into the buildings. I definitely believe those were physical planes. You see wreckage of the planes scattered on the ground a little bit immediately in the hours after that, just the wheels and some of the major pieces like that. And when the plane slammed into buildings, the massive fireballs of all the kerosene going out the other side. Most people don't realize how open floor plan the World Trade Centers are. And so when the planes impacted, the only thing that would really slow them down would be the core beams that are in the very middle. It'd be very easy for the thousands of gallons of fuel to just keep on going straight through the building right out the other side. A object in motion tends to stay in motion. And so the only thing, it'd be like throwing a water balloon at a telephone pole. The balloon would stop at the telephone pole, but all the water would just wrap right around it. That's what happened with the World Trade Centers, and you could see that in the video. Most of the kerosene just went straight out the other side and evaporated in fireballs. What was left was smothering fires that were definitely not getting enough oxygen, were not burning hot. They were slow smoldering fires that were only fanned by a little bit of wind coming through. It's basically the office furniture and paper and stuff that was burning inside. It was definitely not the jet fuel. Again, an object in motion tends to stay in motion, and you clearly saw all the fuel go pretty much right out the other side. Now, this is very personal to me because I grew up in New York City. I spent 7 years there, most of my teenage years. and I loved architecture. And so where we lived over in Brooklyn and Queens, and we could see the World Trade Centers from our house growing up, and it always fascinated me because I loved architecture. And as I was looking through some old pictures, just trying to find some of me in New York City, I was reminded that the first house where we lived, the number was actually 119, 119, 911. And this makes it personal to me because where I used to live over a year ago, the address was also a variation of 119. And so I also pointed out to my friends then how it reminds me of 9/11, just where I lived and where the Lord brought me before, and where the Lord has brought me the last year and a half to a new brook. Literally, it's adjoining a road here in Birmingham, 119, 9/11, and it's south and north. I pass this sign every day when I go to work, and it just reminds me of the South Tower and the North Tower of 9/11. It's just crazy how the Lord has brought the subject of 9/11 really impressed it upon me, not just the location, but living in New York City, just the impression that had on me then. And also, I love architecture. As a kid, I loved going to the library, getting books out on architecture, and just trying to build it with Legos. And so, of course, that doesn't make me an architect, but it did give me a familiarity, a first-hand experience with load-bearing structures. How do you demolish tall, large buildings without making a huge mess on the floor? How do you get them to fall straight down? Whenever you can, you want to do that with Legos. It also makes a royal mess. And so it's just interesting how the Lord gave me a first-hand experience of this. And so when I saw the events unfolding on TV on September 11th, one of the concerns in my mind, as I had seen the planes impact the buildings, and I think one of them had fallen at that point, my concern was I was thinking, wow, I hope these towers don't fall over to the left and right, because that's naturally the way that they should fall. They should not fall straight in their own footprint, because a building will not fall straight in its own footprint unless it's a controlled demolition, because you have to sever load-bearing structures and you have to eliminate potential resistance points. If you get the least resistance, the mass, even though it's in motion, will hit that and divert and deflect. And so that's why most buildings that just crumble, they'll fall to the left or right, because they hit some resistance on the inside. They do not fall straight down. And so those were going through my mind on September 11th, but then they were also pivotal in the days after as I started doing more research and looking at it and finding out how other people were bringing up these implausibilities that led to the conclusion, yes, it was a controlled demolition. You'd have to set off charges, especially in a tall building like that. You would have to sever the main support somewhere near the bottom. Just, again, like if you build any large structure out of Legos, if you want it to fall in its same spot, you have to sever it toward the bottom, because that gets all the mass in motion. It moves downward. It also helps crumple it downward. And then you want to get any resistant points that will push upward and off to the left or right, cause it to deflect. And so it's interesting just how the Lord, again, gave this insight, and then I started to see other people bringing up these same questions, architects even of 9/11, bringing up structural questions, and I was just able to understand it and agree with it. You would have to do that in order to get to fall in its own structure. Also, in 1997, I got to visit the South Tower. We went to the top for a high school graduation thing, and so that was, again, it's very personal. I've been in the towers. I've seen them. They're huge, and just so a lot that came out afterwards I could agree with of, yes, that the buildings should not have naturally fallen the way they did. They had to have been brought down. You had to employ explosions to sever columns, to also pull it down, to create vacuums to pull it down. There's a lot that you have to do in the basement of that building to get it to fall straight down, especially when one considers the structural supports that this building was made of. These were, the jet fuel hypothesis is a joke, especially when, again, anyone could see most of the kerosene went straight out the other side, just like if you hit a telephone pole with a water balloon. There was not that much kerosene in the building at all. It was all smothering fires, and the black smoke tells you that they were smothering. It was not a hot fire whatsoever. And so when you take a lot of that research, and don't have time to go into details with that, but when you start looking at the timing with the celestial clock, how they destroyed it at very specific celestial time markers, and then rebuilt and reopened the building again at those exact same time markers, and encoded even in the flooring, pointing to the same celestial constellations that are at those time markers, a lot tells you real quickly, this is really sketchy, the story that they're telling. This is all done deliberately. They destroyed it deliberately. They're rebuilding it in this shape deliberately. It also tells you they built it initially, the twin towers. They built it that way deliberately. It's built to represent the twins, to represent two twin towers and pillars. It was built that way, it's destroyed that way. It's all part of a plan. And a plan of 9/11 that invoked what? A coalition of multiple nations and kingdoms. There's more than just one nation working on this whole project here, because it kicked off and was the cause for the war on terror that involved so much. So we see a whole segue of events deliberately, apparently, set into motion with a very sketchy cover story. And again, the more that we look at it with the celestial time markers, even more comes to focus. Because where was Jupiter on 9/11? It was in Gemini. Jupiter was at the twins. It was at the top. Sirius is at the bottom. Sirius is a dog. So on 9/11, are there any events with Jupiter that stand out in the news? And are there any events with a dog, Sirius, that stand out in the news that would really raise our eyebrows that something is very sketchy here? Well, there was an individual named Jupiter Yambin who opted to work the morning shift at a restaurant in the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. His name was Jupiter. Rescuers quickly recovered Jupiter's body on the top of the rubble. And of course, he was working in the restaurant at the top of the tower. So this is suspicious that not only is this guy named Jupiter at the top of the tower, he's also one of the first people to be identified. And if you go to the 9/11 Living Memorial, you'll see that Jupiter Yambin was a banquet manager at the windows on the World Restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center. His body was one of the first to be identified. Okay, this is very suspicious. We don't know anything about the guy. We can't say anything about him other than he was hired and he was there. And was that just for a patsy or just to use his name or whatever? We don't know. But he was there. His body was the first to be identified. We just know it's being associated with him being at the top of this tower and being identified as one of the first few. So he would have been hitting the news and closely associated with this. Jupiter at the top. We look at the 9/11 Memorial Museum, a tribute to Port Authority Police Department K-9 officer Sirius, a dog named Sirius, at the World Trade Center. Sirius, he is noted for being the only working dog fatality of the September 11th attacks, in a police office below the South Tower. In the September 11th attacks, a working dog, the only one, he is named Sirius. And he's below, at the bottom of the twin towers, underneath the twins. Just like Sirius is in the dog constellation under Gemini, the twins. Okay, this is not coincidental whatsoever. It's also interesting, K-9 Officer Sirius. K-9. K is the 11th letter in the alphabet. 11-9 Officer Sirius. Happened to be there on 9/11. Sirius underneath the towers. This was done deliberately. It was a ritual. That's what it was. The events of September 11th were a massive ritual. They built it for a ritual. The next building, One World Trade Center, is part of a ritual. It's all an ongoing ritual because the children of darkness do know the time. It's also interesting that the cornerstone that they laid on July 4th was only a symbolic cornerstone. They discarded it and got rid of it, which is literally a picture of them rejecting the cornerstone. That's actually part of the story of the One World Trade Center. They rejected the cornerstone. The events of September 11th were not what they told you. It's just a cover story for a massive ritual that has continued after the events of 9/11. It's embodying the twins being united into one. It's still an ongoing ritual because it's still pointing to what they're working for. 9/11, the prophetic 9/11. That apparently also involves Gemini, the twins, Jupiter, the king, Sirius, which is below the twins, coming from bottomless pit, which also seems to be reminiscent in the memorials of two pits right next to the One World Trade Center. A building that is built to a height of 1776. What happened in 1776 with the signing of the Declaration of Independence? Jupiter, the king, was in the twins, conjunction of Jupiter and Venus, and then Jupiter was in line with Sirius, which is underneath the twins. So the events of September 11th harken to the events of 1776, but it should sober us that we're also coming to the second cycle of Jupiter since 2001, where Jupiter is again now in Gemini, going to be in line with Sirius. July 4th, 1776 is an important marker because that was a set in motion of a larger ritual, a larger conspiracy, considering what prophecy was in play. The strangers that were pilgrims in the land that is not theirs. Of a Christian people is fulfilling prophecy. But the land is not theirs. It's a secular nation, the United States of America. That came into being in July 4th, 1776. Co-opting the nation to steer it apparently towards sudden destruction by the ones who have rejected the cornerstone. And one doesn't have to look very far in American history to see the Masonic influence, especially in our capital, and especially on our very own money. Because this is not just a limited ritual or limited conspiracy. The entire country, the entire work of 1776 is to set in motion a new world order. And we see this on the back of the $1 bill, the greenback, which is associated with America, the United States of America, with the sayings Nuit Coeptis Novus Ordo Seclorum. The front side of the Great Seal of America is the eagle, but it is really the phoenix. If you look very closely at it, it deliberately has a little tuft at the back of the head. In heraldry, this marks the bird as a phoenix. What is on our dollar bill is that America is set up to be a phoenix. It will burn one day for a rebirth. This is what they see as needed to bring forth the one world order. The Great Seal of the United States, first used in 1782. Nuit Coeptis, because of its context as a caption above the Eye of Providence, the standard translations are Providence favors our undertakings, and Providence has favored our undertakings. Now, by itself, it means favored undertakings, commencement undertaking. It's the context that gives you clarity of who is favoring the undertaking. Well, most people see that as the eye of providence. They would say, oh, that represents God. But to the Masons, they would see that as the light of Sirius, the glow around the eye that denotes that it is Sirius, Lucifer. Lucifer favors our undertakings. And what date is etched on that pyramid? It's 1776. That's what they are commemorating, when Lucifer favors the undertakings that they started in 1776 to co-opt this land where the pilgrims and strangers were, to lead it toward a sudden destruction, a phoenix moment of sudden destruction that's going to bring in the one world order led by Lucifer. You say, well, that's reading a little bit too much. Well, what does the bottom phrase say? Novus Ordo Seclorum, new order of the ages. Thompson derived the phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum from a poem by the Roman poet Virgil. That phrase comes from the part of the poem, the great cycle of ages is born anew. Now returns the maid, returns the reign of Saturn. Now from high heaven a new generation comes down. Yet do thou at that boy's birth, in whom the iron age shall begin to cease, and the golden age to arise over all the world. Holy Lucina, be gracious, now thine own Apollo, Apollyon, reigns. Again, Apollo, Apollyon are interchangeable names of the same person, recognized in history. Okay, so the saying Novus Ordo Seclorum about the new order of the ages, what new order is it talking about? It comes directly, it's chosen deliberately from a poem that talks about the return of the reign of Saturn, the reign of Satan. Now from high heaven a new generation comes down, led by the fallen angels. And you have to get rid of the iron age. That has to cease. The iron, the steel age has to cease. A golden age is going to arise over all the world with a birthing when Apollo, Apollyon reigns. So again, take it in context that the Masons see the glowing light there as the light of Sirius. Lucifer favors the undertakings of the new order of the ages. It's going to bring in the reign of Satan when the iron age shall cease, bring in the golden age of Atlantis for Apollo, Apollyon. There is going to be a birthing. They started the work in 1776 directly with this goal in mind, to hand over their power to Apollyon. They have rejected the chief cornerstone. They know exactly what they're doing. And this is directly on the money of the government of the United States of America. The work started in 1776, when the Iron Age will cease. And what better picture is that than the destroying of two steel iron towers, bringing them down to bring in a one World Trade Center, the merging of two to create a building that's literally called One World Trade Center. One world. And the events of 9/11 certainly set many coalitions in motion toward that very goal, a new world order, which is also going to require a larger 9/11 event that they are working toward. The 9/11 event that's going to happen when the Son of Man is revealed, Jesus Christ, comes just like he left at the Ascension, comes to take us, receive us to where he is. He himself said his coming will light up the whole sky. It will be visible. You'll see it just like lightning lights up the sky from one end to the other. It will be a very visible event. But exactly the same day is also going to be the opening of the bottomless pit when the beast comes out, when he is also revealed. And apparently there's also going to be massive sun destruction released. The Bible tells us that he's coming with all power and lying wonders. So a lot is going to happen and hit the fan at his coming as well. The children of darkness who have rejected the chief cornerstone are expecting and anticipating this event, and they are working many rituals to remind themselves and celebrate the revealing of the son of perdition, Apollyon. 1776 reminds us and points to so many things literally coming together of the king they are expecting. And we see the same celestial time marker rehearsed here in just a few weeks in August 2025. Again, Christ warns us that we will not know the day or hour, but we will see the day approaching. We will know that it's nigh even at the doors. So we do not know the day or hour, but we do see what appears to be a celestial bookmark when things are possibly going to hit the fan. Things are already in motion. We can see a certain domino sequence already in motion by the children of darkness. And when we look at the celestial lights, especially the celestial signs set in motion at the same spot in 2014, we are expecting that as Jupiter reaches the end of its circuit, it will also be reaching the end of its declarations about the day that is approaching. When we look on the celestial clock, August 12th, 2025, that's when Jupiter and Venus will be in conjunction directly in line with Sirius, 104:10:4. We are also reminded that in 1610, there is a triple conjunction at the feet of Castor. In 1622, time of pilgrims, Jupiter and Venus were on the right of Pollux. In 1634 was the last time that they were in a close conjunction, right exactly in line with Sirius. So again, so many reminders coming up that remind us of the prophecy already in motion. Already today, we are living in light of the prophecy with the seed of Abraham by faith, already set in motion, still set in motion. One day he is coming to pick up his purchased possession, those strangers and pilgrims. There is going to be a second Exodus. So much reminds us of the power of God's promises. When we look on the celestial clock, when we look up, when we lift up our heads, and we consider the prophecy that he said would happen, and that also reassures us that everything else he said that's going to happen will happen. We're also reminded of the grand conjunction that happened in 1623, right at Cancer, the crab, the gathering, right there, the celestial stars. And then also in 2001 of August, there was the close conjunction of Jupiter and Venus right there in Castor. With a few days later, on 9/11, were the events with the Twin Towers, destruction, bringing the steel down, the iron down, causing the collapse of what represents the old order, starting in motion the building toward the new order. When Jupiter was almost technically in line with Sirius, but it had been visibly in line with Sirius, very close with the events of September 11th. But again, Jupiter the king at the Twin Towers, sudden destruction, that this came out of nowhere. And then K9 dog Sirius, K equals 11, 11-9 Sirius, 9/11 Sirius, below World Trade Center 2 South Tower. Jupiter Yambin was at the top of the North Tower. And this whole ritual was commemorated with 88 lights in twin towers pointing to 88 constellations along the figure 8 line circuit, coming back to itself like a figure 8. There are 88 constellations, and the number 8 is like the solar analemma. If you go outside and take a picture of the sun every other week at the same location, the same time, the sun will form just by its motion over that time. As it moves through the circuit, it will form an 8 shape in the sky as the sun is moving through the different points along the line. So you could mark out one of the 12 constellations at each point along that sign, because that 8 is representing the sun as it moves along the entire length of the celestial circuit, the line spoken of in Psalm 19. So an analemma does represent this circuit spoken of in Psalm 19. And so 88 constellations along the 8 of that circuit, just twisted, also forms a never-ending loop, because the circuit keeps restarting over and over again. So an infinite loop, essentially. you have an 8 and an 8, the infinity along the twisted circuit 8, because it keeps repeating in 88. And so considering the events of 9/11, it catches our attention when Jupiter completes an entire 8 circuit and comes back to the same spot at the twins in 2014. April 15th was the blood moons. When the moon was at Virgo, the Virgin, Jupiter came back to the same spot when it's almost in line with Sirius. This is when our celestial circuit journey started, with Jupiter visibly in line with Sirius at the twins. This was the same time period when they were almost finished the One World Trade Center. They were opening the plaza to the public. They would not finish opening the building till November, but it is around the same time that they were starting to open it up to the public. And the same year that the building was completed, same year that all these celestial signs started ticking off in 2014 when Jupiter the King was at the twins, this uniting right in line with Sirius. So again, in one circuit of Jupiter, completing 1/8, one circuit that repeats, they went from the twin towers to the uniting of those two shapes into an antiprism of the One World Trade Center in an antipyramidal shape, all in one cycle with the exact same celestial time markers. And now Jupiter is coming to the end of another circuit in August 2025, when Jupiter and Venus will be in close conjunction directly in line with Sirius, which is also the completion of another 8 circuit, which also leads us to suspect that more things that they have set in motion will also be pointing to this, especially the more that we look at the symbolism in this ritual, the timing of 1776, and the knowing of the prophetic strangers and pilgrims that are in the land that are about to leave. As Christians, we are looking up and lifting up our heads. We are looking at what the heavens declare about our redemption drawing nigh. And the celestial signs started in 2014, drawing our attention to the King at the twins, a beautiful picture of reconciliation. And then we saw Star Bethlehem events, the Revelation 12 signs, so many other celestial events, the Joel signs warning us the great and terrible day is approaching. All that within one circuit that started at this point. That's what we are as Christians are looking at. And then also in the corner of our eye, we are aware what the children of darkness who have rejected the chief cornerstone, what they say, the calls of peace and safety that warn us that sudden destruction is coming. As Christians, we are looking at the story that is told within this one circuit of Jupiter, coming back to this beautiful picture of reconciliation, reminded of the grand conjunction that took place within this window in 2020, right at the same anniversary of the Pilgrims, 400-year anniversary, reminding us time. We are running out of time. That was one of the signs when Jupiter and Saturn, which represents time just visually, it's the slowest moving planet, so it's long been associated with time. Jupiter and Saturn got together right near Sagittarius, reminding us the King is about to release judgments against the adversary, all those who have rejected the chief cornerstone, who do not want him to rule over them, who do not want his kingdom. We are reminded of the 400 years since the people, the strangers and pilgrims who want to bring forth fruit for God, those who desire the glory of God. And friends, there is so much that is pointing to this time, the power of prophecy, the power of Christ's promises, which should fill us with exceeding great joy as we see so much in context that our Father has shown us along this journey. From a Christian perspective, as we see the day approaching, again, we're not surprised we see the enemy at work, also leading apparently toward the same exact time frame, understanding that apparently the ritual started in September 2001, but it is still ongoing because they are expecting a larger 9/11 that the same structure and the same location symbolizes. Again, the building height is deliberately made to point to 1776 with the top floor 104. There is a light at the very top, which reminds us of the light of Lucifer that the children of darkness admire. Then also Sirius with the 104. Double references to the light at the top of the pyramid shape. The radiance of Sirius Lucifer is the context, so Lucifer favors our undertakings. Started in 1776 for a new order of the ages. The golden age of Apollo Apollyon. That's what this structure represents, and it embodies what is on the great seal of this entire nation, used by the government of this nation where the strangers and pilgrims reside. So this building embodies what is on the great seal because it embodies the great work that they are working toward of their one mind, working to hand over power and authority to the beast that is coming up out of the bottomless pit, with the pit also right here at the same structure. Revelation 9:11, they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon, Apollo. The Bible tells us this. And again, consider the audience that the book of Revelation was written to. They knew who Apollyon was. Apollo, the son of destruction, the son of perdition. That's literally what it means. Son of perdition is sudden destruction. That's what Apollo means. The son of destruction. Destruction and ruin. That's what he brings. He's bringing the sudden destruction. So with the events of 9/11, they do seem to be picking those dates, that number sequence, to specifically hold it in your face what they are expecting. The opening of the bottomless pit. They are working toward handing power to Apollyon, Apollo, to start the new order of the ages. That's why apparently they code it for 9/11. Because that's what they're pointing to and mocking so many Christians and mocking the world of what they're working toward. So they built this whole structure deliberately to the height of 1776. What does that remind us of? Revelation 17, you add 7 and 6, that's 13. 17:6, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. The whole events of 9/11 and 1776, they tell you and hold it in your face. They even print it on the back of your money. This is what they're working toward. The events of 9/11 are part of this. The events of 2014 and One World Trade Center are part of this. They're leading toward the son of destruction coming at his sudden destruction that he's bringing with them. The events that are going to usher in the new order of the ages, but they have to tear down with sudden destruction the old order first. And that was symbolized by the destroying of 2 steel tower structures to bring in their golden age. This building embodies the ritual. It embodies what they're working toward. Now, one thing that stands out with the One World Trade Center is the spire at the top, the antenna. It looks very rough. That is actually done deliberately. There's actually a pointed spat over the World Trade Spire. In 2012, the developer changed the design of the project's antenna spire to strip it of its architectural shell. When they designed the One World Trade Center, they designed it with a cladding, an architectural shell, so the antenna would not be ugly. But in 2012, they decided we're going to leave the cladding, the shell, off. We're only going to finish the very cap of it. And that's what everyone saw when they topped out the spire. They saw the finished cap with the light in the cap. The light in the pyramidal cap being lifted up on top of an unfinished spire, deliberately, purposefully left unfinished except for the cap, which should not surprise us since we see it as an embodiment of the Great Seal. What does it have? A finished cap and light, with the light of Lucifer, with the unfinished top gap, because the work is not finished yet. The grand work that they've started is not finished yet. It's atop a 1776 pyramidal anti-prism structure, also embodying the celestial time marker of the twins. Twins united, merged into one World Trade Center. The 2 tower structures merged into an anti-prism. It literally is the embodiment of the Great Seal, their work to hand over power to Apollo, Apollyon, 9/11. We look closer at the spire. There's 3 rings, which are supposedly to hold radar and microwave arrays for communication systems. Communication ring. I noticed that there are 3 rings, very visible. I mean, you could see it practically from the ground level, right at the base of this unfinished portion. They finished the pyramid up to this portion, then you have 3 rings, the unfinished portion of the spire, and then the glowing cap. So considering how the rest of it codes Lucifer, favors our undertaking starting in 1776 for a new order of the ages for Apollo Apollyon, with 9/11 in 1776, I suspect that the rings also go with that same message, that to finish out the unfinished portion, it is showing 3 rings, 3 circuits. Now the top floor is 104, which is Sirius. The top is 1776, which was when Jupiter was in line with Sirius. So we would suspect that the symbolism of the 3 rings, 3 circuits, deals with circuits. The first circuit was when Jupiter came to Sirius in 2001 with the events of 9/11. Then going to another circuit, completing that, lining up with Sirius 104 in 2014 when they opened up the One World Trade Center. Go another circuit would bring us with Jupiter in line with Sirius, which is what the spire is pointing toward, Gemini, where Jupiter was in line with Sirius. That's what the whole thing's pointing toward. It would be coming back to that same spot in August of 2025. So that's what it appears the 3 rings represent, is the completion of coming to the same spot 3 times, or the completion of 2 circuits. With the last circuit being the circuit when we have seen all the celestial signs reminding us that the great and terrible day of the Lord is coming, with the warnings of peace and safety also happening in that exact same time frame. Between 2014 and where we are today, they just keep increasing. 9/11 was a ritual. The buildings were a ritual. They are still a ritual of what was started in 1776 and is about to come to completion when they are about to hand over power. And they know it's going to involve 9/11, sudden destruction. All this is encoded right directly on the money printed by the government of the United States of America. This isn't some lone conspiracy or just some small group. This is on the money of the United States of America, with the denomination, the dollar, that is most associated with the United States, the dollar. Our great seal is right on that dollar, and they hold it right in face. They even tell you what it all is part of, the New World Order, who favors their undertakings. But they just don't tell you which God they serve. So much is embodied on the dollar, the financial strength of America. Again, the One World Trade Center in the financial district. So we should not be surprised that all this symbolism is held in our face in connection with currency, money. Which brings the question, the dollar sign is usually 2 strokes with a swirl, some type of ribbon, and S going through them. What does this represent? Where does it come from? If you start reading about the dollar sign, you quickly find out that nobody knows where the dollar symbol came from. There's a couple of ideas that are very strong, but nobody knows conclusively where the dollar sign came from. But there's a lot of suspicion that it came from the Spanish dollar, which has 2 pillars on it, which represent the pillars of Hercules, plus ultra, farther beyond, representing supposedly the pillars of Hercules that were placed at the Strait of Gibraltar, which also in the occult thinking led toward Atlantis, or the Golden Age and all that. Francis Bacon, a known Rosicrucian, he also wrote about Atlantis, their concepts, at the same year as the Pilgrims, by the way. But there's a lot of common theories that these twin pillars, plus ultra the pillars of Hercules, is what the dollar symbol represents. Because if in shorthand you just draw 2 marks to represent the pillars, then a squiggly mark to represent the ribbons and the banners that normally were on those pillars, you would have what is commonly known as the dollar sign, just with 1. But it wasn't also uncommon to have a banner span that same saying with both pillars, plus ultra, the banner spanning and wrapping around both of them with 1 squiggle. So you could write it, and you could express that same thought of the 2 pillars as 2 lines with a banner woven across them, or just 1 line with a banner, or bring the 2 together closely with the same banner, which is a manner of shorthand. So it's easy to see how the dollar sign comes from the twin pillars of Hercules, which are in the occult connected with leading toward Atlantis and the Golden Age. And especially as we see that connection, we can see how, yes, the dollar sign very strongly is representing the twin pillars, twin towers, which are also very common in Masonic teachings as well. Good and evil, dualistic, and becoming a god. The lie that Satan has told since the beginning of creation. And when we see these same concepts embodied on the back of the dollar with the Great Pyramid toward his work, even referencing the poem about tearing down the Steel Age, the Iron Age, to bring in the Golden Age, we see this played out ritual-wise with the twin towers, the twin pillars. We can see a stronger connection between the dollar sign, what's on the dollar, and why the twin towers were used as rituals. Because it's all acting out their Novus Ordo Seclorum, their great work and undertaking that they've put in place since 1776. They have to bring down the Iron Age to bring in their Golden Age that's going to rise over all the world, over the face of the whole world. So they have to set in motion events that are particularly going to lead to a snare spring that's going to affect the face of the whole earth. When Apollyon comes onto the scene, when the bottomless pit is opened and that snare is sprung. It's a massive ritual led by those who pull the strings of power in the United States of America and really the world. The twin pillars represent their Samson option. Just like in the Bible, Samson pulled down the pillars on the temple of the idolatrous god, and on his followers, the children of darkness are copying it in the reverse to mock God. They want to tear down the old world order. They want to tear down the Christian nation, the Christian influence across the world, the influence of the Bible, the influence of the pilgrims, the influence of the Christians who want to bring forth fruit for God and glory for God. They want to destroy that. And so they are going to have a Samson option moment to bring it all crashing down, which is also apparently going to bring down America as a gold reserve to have a massive ripple effect across the world too. But now embodying the process, they're showing the process of 1776 in motion with the One World Trade Center bringing down those two towers toward a greater 9/11. That will happen when their Apollyon figure does come onto the scene, and he will be the one to finally pull down the final pillars. A work, again, started in 1776 in the nation where the strangers and pilgrims were. A prophecy was set in motion, and the children of darkness are aware of it, which also tells you they are aware of the celestial time and when the day of the Lord is coming, when time runs out for those prophecies. And so the more that we see the twin towers as part of these rituals and the occult influence embodied on the back of the dollar bill and by the dollar sign, we are also alarmed when we see the figure who is chairing the presidency of the United States of America at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Tiles with these same twin towers and plus ultra are throughout that estate. And he posts enough pictures publicly so that people know these tiles with the twin towers plus ultra leading toward the age of Atlantis are connected with Trump, the President of the United States, the work that was started in 1776. Plus ultra, the twin towers, strongly connected to this man who is now the 47th president, who likes to remind everybody that he is the 45th, 47th president. And we are seeing events escalate in the world, with tensions escalating in the world toward World War III. That's what it's going to unfold to. But led by decisions made by 45, 47. He's the one chairing this whole work of the United States of America. And so you see this connection with the president and the seal, the work that was started in 1776. Trump is finishing the work. And that is why he associates himself with 45, 47. It's all scripted. Where is this power play being done? The actions that affect the rest of the world. It's all from Washington, D.C. Organized, planned city, an occult city laid out in occult fashion. A capital city, a capital of a work that is deliberately placed at a river, a watery spot, a swamp, even back then, a swamp wet spot where two states come together. And what states are those at this wet spot? That is the state of Maryland and Virginia. Washington, the District of Washington, D.C., is right where these two come together, where they spread at the watery wet spot. Of course, Maryland is literally Mary land, Mary next to the Virgin land, also named after the Virgin Queen. The spot was chosen very deliberately to place the work that started in 1776 at this spot, recalling the Virgin Mary. And this capital was placed right at the spreading of this river, this wet spot, at the spreading of a Virgin Mary, because this is a occult sex ritual. And that's why they placed a giant phallus, denoting the male generative organ, right next to the water as close as they could build it. And right up the way, they built the Capitol building, a giant dome which represents the womb. You have the male organ, the woman organ, right here at this wet spot, the spreading of the Virgin Mary. They knew exactly what they're doing. This work was started very deliberately because they are mocking the virgin birth. And so they situate the Virgin Mary, they situate the male organ at the wet spot of this Virgin Mary to birth their work in the womb. And to make it really clear that, yes, that's what they are showing and demonstrating in ritual form, they put the Washington Monument right in the Vesica Pisces, right, letting you know that, yes, it's right in the female organ, right at this wet spot, the spreading of Virgin Mary. Because they are doing the opposite of the Virgin Mary, which brought forth the Son of Man, Jesus Christ. They are doing the opposite. They are forcing a birthing with the phallus of Baal to bring forth the son of perdition, the Antichrist. And that is the work that they are going to birth And that birthing will probably take place in the city that demonstrates this ritual. It will probably take place in what represents the womb, or relate to that. All of Washington, D.C. is oriented around the womb and the phallus, this gigantic sex ritual mocking Jesus Christ, but lauding the birthing of the son of perdition. All this was started in 1776, planned and started in 1776, and has been working ever since that point to bring forth the New World Order at the opening of the bottomless pit, the Antichrist Apollyon, their 9/11 event. And this should be very suspicious when we consider the womb, the Capitol building, holds what? It holds the Congress. What Congress is now in session? It is the 119th Congress. 911 Congress is finally in play at the Capitol building, which represents the womb. 9/11, right at the Capitol. Friend, I don't know exactly where the sun destruction will emanate from, but I believe a 9/11 event will probably take place right where they're pointing. A birthing should take place, because that's what they're planning on, and that's what they spell out on the back of the dollar bill. And so it should not surprise us that that would take place at the very heart of their plan in Washington, D.C. All this to usher in what? Their golden age. Doesn't that sound familiar? Donald Trump's historic win paves the way for a new golden age. Trump vows new golden age for America. Right when he won the presidency, he let everybody know that he is vowing to bring in a golden age. And as you have heard his speeches since that point, he makes constant reference to the new golden age. Even his speech before Congress a few days after that. A golden age. They are holding it right in your face. They are about to destroy America to usher in their golden age. And what did he bring to the Oval Office? A Declaration of Independence. After decades of being stored away, President Trump unveils the Declaration of Independence, now proudly displayed in the Oval Office. It's not the original one, but it is probably a historical one just by the way they're taking care of it. It's probably very historic, but it's not the original one. But this 45th, 47th president who's bringing in the golden age reminds everyone about July 4th, 1776, when this work started. Because apparently he is the one going to be finishing it. This document, this date, July 4, 1776, so much was set in motion. The capital city, the United States of America, the entire entity, it's all working toward 9/11, the golden age. The golden age of Lucifer, Apollo, Apollyon. And he appears to be the one who's going to bring it all in. He's to be the fill-in until the Antichrist arrives. He's embodying and working out, playing out the ritual. And that is why he's also heavily associated with gold. He lives in a gold apartment, Trump Tower. Trump has long been associated with gold, just like Apollo, Apollyon, just like the golden age of Atlantis that they hope to usher in. Twin pillars are throughout his apartment as well. Goes with that same concept. What's painted on the roof? Well, they have murals of Apollo in his sun chariot and Prometheus as well. I mean, who paints this stuff on his ceiling except for one who adores Apollo? What is over the family fireplace? Is it the family photo? No, it's a picture of Apollo in his chariot. The family photo is in the back of the hall. Apollo in his sun chariot place of prominence in Trump apartment. Because he is associated with Apollo. He's the fill-in this ritual. He's also the one who's going to be going point and leading it and ushering in the sun destruction as part of handing over the power. It's all scripted. They've been planning this for hundreds of years. It's been in his family. They've been working this. He is associated with gold because Apollo is the golden boy. Statues of Apollo were covered with gold because he was known as the golden boy. He was also associated with the bow and the locust, just like the book of Revelation tells us. Trump represents the golden boy. He represents Apollyon. That's why he paints his face orange, because he represents the golden boy, Apollo. Trump, the one heavily associated with Trump Towers and real estate in New York City, and even talked about possibly buying the trade centers. That was well known. He is tied to the trade centers also because of his close affiliations with real estate and the Twin Towers in New York City. The day of the 9/11 attacks, he was interviewed by multiple TV stations to get his take on it and how he called his friend Larry Silverstein. He is very aware of what took place on 9/11 because he is part of it. He's part of the children of darkness. When did Trump win his first presidency? November 9th, 2016. November is the 11th month. 11/9, 9/11 is when he first won his presidency. 2004, he won presidency on November 6th. Again, November 11, you flip the entire thing, you have 9/11. And it became president exactly in the 119th Congress in 2025. All these 9/11s in veiled fashion, they're done inverted because that's how the children of darkness like to hide their messaging. They're inverse. They're the children of darkness. They're the inverse of light. So they invert a lot of their messaging. All this coming together with Donald Trump, the 45th president. You add 4 and 5 together, that gives you 9. When was 9 elected? November 9th, which is the 11th month, 9th day, 119, 9/11. He was the 47th president. You add 4 and 7 together, you get 11. Elected in November 6, 11/6. You rotate that, 9/11. So he became 45-47, which adds together as 9/11 in January of 2025, along with the Congress that he's president of, which is the 119th 9/11. So you have a 9/11 president elected on 2 different 9/11s over a 9/11 Congress. That's 4 different 9/11s all coming together. A 9/11 president over a 9/11 Congress tells you the scripted ritual is coming very close to an end. This individual, this president with supposed great power over a powerful nation, supposedly, associated with a great seal. This individual, 9/11, the very seal that represents what they're working toward. The return of Saturn, the return of Satan, the fallen angel, when the Iron Age will cease and the Golden Age will arise over all the world when Apollyon reigns. This 9/11 president, 9/11 Congress, over the United States of America, a work set into play in 1776, a man associated with Twin Towers, who is also associated publicly with twins, been in commercials playing twins, and there's even rumors that he has a twin, one wearing the red tie, one wearing a blue tie. Can't speak to that any definitively, but that is a theme that even himself puts out publicly, association with twins, Gemini. The one orange-faced individual, golden-faced individual, even publicly associated with the end of the world. Which shouldn't surprise us when Revelation 9:11 and 17:13 tells us they are of one mind. They're all working together on this. They all know the ritual. This is why in 2021, at the inauguration of Joseph Biden, just shortly after the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims, they shone 2 lights up to the heavens, right at the phallus of Baal, Osiris, making a veiled reference toward the 400 years. They know a prophetic time has been in play all this time in this same country, even part woven into the government and the constitutional system that we have here in America. They know a time of prophecy has come to an end. But they also know, apparently tied with that, is on the celestial clock a completion of a declaration by the heavens that also will finish out 3 years, a 4th grace year, and in the 5th year, the 9/11 event will start. Also within that time period, the parable of the fig tree that Christ referenced with his coming. So in early 2021, they commemorated a light ritual which reminds the world of the events of 9/11, 2001, the ongoing merging and uniting of the twins, the celestial time markers that are so important to them, with the same events of the ritual enactment of 9/11 that they are looking forward to, when they're going to give birth to the work that will bring in the Golden Age. The birthing apparently will happen in the same place where that ritual is acted out as well. That is why the symbol that they used for the inauguration of Joseph Biden also had a distinct phoenix in it, because there will be a phoenix sudden destruction moment for a rebirth. All this taking place, this ritual in Washington, D.C., the heart of the Great Seal, represents the government there. Everything seems to be on track. Everything seems to be working toward their Novus Ordo Seclorum, when they hand over power to Apollyon. With Trump, a children of darkness, who has put out the peace and safety calls, who is not going to escape the sudden destruction that apparently he is going to trigger. The enemy knows exactly what time it is. We know the time from the celestial declarations. We're at a prophetic time that resonates so much with the prophecy that's already been in play, but also reminds us that there's still prophecy to come with the sun destruction. Sun destruction that apparently is also going to involve the land where the pilgrims currently are, right at the Exodus 2. So as we watch the news unfold in the days ahead, things getting hotter and hotter, leading toward a plausible sudden destruction scenario. Just like the events of September 11th, they're going to have a plausible story. It's a cover story for what they're already working behind the scenes. And so we're going to see in the news things setting the world up for a sudden destruction on the horizon because they know it's coming. And they are the ones initiating it. They are the ones invoking the controlled demolition. The controlled demolition. For their 9/11, the revealing of the son of perdition. The son of ruin and destruction. They are of one mind. They're going to give their power and strength unto the beast. But God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. Things will happen exactly like God has said it will happen. With the pilgrims, with the strangers in the land, with even those who go out to battle against the Son of Man, who reject him, he will be victorious over them. He will set up his kingdom. He will rule and reign from Jerusalem. Everything will take place exactly as God has said. Friends, we are running out of time, but we see prophecy in play. We see exactly what Scripture tells us will happen, both with the strangers in the land, but with also the children of darkness, who have rejected the chief cornerstone. We see it before our very own eyes. We see it played out in the news. We see things ramping up toward a 9/11, toward a sun destruction, and we see the day approaching when Jesus Christ is going to start making his enemies his footstool. The celestial clock, the heavens declare the glory of God. They show his handiwork. They show his handiwork that hearkens and reminds us of prophecy, of his promises, the day approaching, the tapestry of redemption, the pickup of a purchased possession. And friends, as we see so much the handiwork and the wisdom and the insight that he gives here at this late hour, we can be filled with exceeding great joy. Because our Father wants us to know. He wants us to see his hand at work in this world. We can see the children of darkness working. We can see so many depressing things in the world, but the more that we look up, we lift up our eyes, we look into Scripture, we can see that God is still on his throne. We can see that Jesus Christ is victorious and he will rule and reign. He is completely in control. And friends, we can rest our heart, our soul, our life in his hands. We can go forward out to meet him, filled with exceeding great joy at seeing the celestial declaration, at seeing a beautiful picture, the morning star who's coming quickly, beautiful pictures of reconciliation. Jesus Christ, the mediator between God and men. We have so much to fill us with exceeding great joy, friends. So as we look up and lift up our heads, let's also follow his instructions because he will be faithful. He will be faithful to his promises. We need to take heed to ourselves. Let's not look at this world. Let's not get caught up in this world. Let's not be punch drunk with everything the world is chasing after at this late hour. Let's fix our eyes on Jesus Christ, our Redeemer, our Mediator. And let's watch ourselves and pray always, watching always, being sober about what is going on, being sober about the reality of God's Word, God's prophecies, God's promises. And let's live accordingly. Let's not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. And let's use the news, let's use what's unfolding in the world as reminders to be sober, to be focused at this late hour, to draw nigh to our Lord with a true heart, to provoke one another unto love and to good works. This world is about to pass away very suddenly, very suddenly. He is about to start making his enemies his footstool, so let's draw nigh to God with a true heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let's hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as ye see the day approaching, when he's going to start making his enemies his footstool, the enemies who have rejected the chief cornerstone. The Lord has shown us so much on the celestial circuit journey, so many signs, so many warnings that that day is approaching, but so many encouragements that the day of redemption, the pickup of a purchased possession, is also approaching. It's nigh, even at the doors. We are surrounded by the fulfillments of prophecy, Israel, the strangers and pilgrims in the land of America, the celestial signs. We see so much bringing us back full circle to the reminder where the celestial circuit journey started. So many things apparently leading to a conclusion of the declarations, right at a spot reminding us of reconciliation, Also, so beautifully portraying being with our Father in our Father's house, being received and taken up to our Father, to be with our beloved. We do not know the day or hour, but we see so many heavenly declarations spelling out this beautiful picture every single day. We are running out of days and hours. At the end of this video, click the link for our next video, which has a celestial review of the entire celestial circuit that Jupiter has taken since 2001. The events that have unfolded since then, but then also the bevy of celestial signs, so much increasing and leading to a significant point when Jupiter is coming back to the same spot that it started in 2014 with the celestial signs. A lot telling us the celestial clock is telling us we are running out of time. Check out our PDF also, The Heavens Declared, a link in the description box. Gives a Christian perspective on biblical astronomy and some of the celestial signs that we've seen since 2014. Also, I highly recommend Like Christ's Instructions, Be Ye Ready. Download our resources, review Christ's instructions. This is how we show that we're drawing nigh to Him with a true heart. We should demonstrate that we have an ear to hear what He says, and that we're going to rise up and go out to meet Him. We're going to run for the prize. Jesus Christ is the prize. Download these resources, links are in the description box. Friends, the hour is late. We've heard so many trumpet calls at midnight that have told us the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet Him. Let your life show that you are going out to meet Him, to draw nigh to Him, to be united with Him. The whole point of reconciliation, to draw nigh to your Redeemer. So friends, let's rise up, let's trim our lamps, let's cast off the works of darkness, let's put on the armor of light, Jesus Christ, and let's go out to meet Him, hearing Him, heeding Him, loving Him, and serving Him, first and highest above all else, drawing nigh with a true heart, till He comes. Maranatha.